Aquatic-plants. The green frontier. These are the discussions of the podcast Horticult. Its continuing mission: to talk about strange new cultivars, to seek out new flowers and plant them, to boldly garden like no one has before.
All right, this is Blaine from the Horticult. Hi, everybody. How you doing? So today we're going to go over aquatic plants and how to have your own aquatic garden. We don't go into how to make a pond or anything like that, but just if you have a pond, what plants you can use and how to keep care of them and try different stuff in that realm, the aquatic realm. But just want to thank you all for listening and hope you enjoy the episode. Let's plant on, Babylon. Cha-cha-cha.
Word up, bud.
What's up, Brad?
Nada. Good to be back in the studio.
Oh, yeah. So, as you well know, I'm Blaine.
And I'm Brad.
And we are the Horticult. But we're all members of the Horticult. If you're listening to this podcast, you are a member of the Horticult.
The grand audience.
The grand audience. That's right.
Grand Peabody.
Wherever you're listening from. And we talked a little bit about maybe doing a poll about what we're going to call our listeners. But I think what I want to call them is podlings. Reason why, it kind of sounds planty.
Yeah.
Podling. This is a podcast.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I like the Dark Crystal, which those little guys in the Dark Crystal that they would suck the essence out of were called podlings. So, yeah.
The little potato.
Yeah, the little potato guy. Yeah, they look like they got hit in the face with the 2x4 guys.
Oh, right.
They're all swelled. Yeah.
You know, and also, too, just to add a little bit to that, what we use in the greenhouse, term that we use is germlings. So like germination, germlings. It's the newly germinated seeds. So that is very.
So maybe we will do.
So podlings. Podlings.
Yeah,
perfect.
just podling.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that I kind of thought about was, rhizomes. So we just call them our rhizomes.
Oh yes.
Little plants from the mother plant, or feeding you nutrients. And so maybe we will do a poll on Facebook and see what the people say.
Yeah.
We're democratic, right?
Yeah, oh, for sure, yeah.
So, I think it'll be out of those three.
Okay, so we've got podlings,
Germ. What'd you say?
Oh, germling. Well, that's what we use in the greenhouse, but I think that kind of ties in better with podlings. Much better.
Germlings,
yeah.
And then rhizome. Yeah, we could just forget. Screw it. Screw it.
Rhizoctonio.
We'll just call everybody podlings.
There we go. It's decided.
If you have an issue with that, then I'm sorry. We still love you.
Yeah. Potato people.
Today, on the podcast, we wanted to go over aquatic plants. So here we are.
Yes.
And since you're the one with the water feature.
Yeah, I can just give a little bit of a backstory on that. Okay, so we're coming into some really warm temperatures right now, and it's kind of nice and a little bit refreshing to see this water feature in the backyard. So this pond that we've built, and we have being able to provide a drink to all of the little creatures and critters that come and visit the yard, birds in particular. And so creating this backyard wildlife sanctuary adds a really cool component. But what you can do is, well, there's a lot that goes into it. You can't just go out there and dig a big old hole in your backyard and fill it full of water. So there's a lot of steps that go into building a nice pond or a nice water feature. And one of those components maybe I should just skip right ahead, like over all of the building portion of a pond, because that's a whole separate deal. But once you have a water feature and a pond, then you can create this aquatic garden. Okay.
Yeah. Digging it.
And it's completely different. It's a different world than your terrestrial plants, that you go buy at Home Depot or Walmart or wherever, and then beautify your yard. This is a little bit more. You don't need to know a lot, but there are a few components that I'm gonna mention today that's gonna really help out.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I have a list of plants that I wanted to throw out your way, and a lot of people are familiar with these. Once we go through the plant list, then I'm going to kind of tell you what you need to do with potting these things up. So you've got cattails, right? Mm-hmm. They can be weedy.
Yep.
But anytime you are adding that to your water feature, it's in a container, it's in a pot, and that restricts the root invasiveness. So it's in a container, and it's more clump. It grows more in a clump coming out of the water, and I have cattails in my pond, and they look awesome. It's always kind of cool when you get those brown things in the autumn, the fall, those brown seed.
I don't even know what you'd call them.
Like corn dog roasting sticks or what? I don't even know. Yeah,
the seed corn dogs.
Yeah,
they do. They look totally like corn dogs.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've got cattails. You have juncus, or you've heard of juncus. You know juncus. There's like the spiral form juncus. There's the zebra juncus. So it's kind of like it's like a grass. It's a monocot that has a round or cylindrical, almost like a straw. So they're kind of hollow in the middle, type blade. And those are really ornamental. Those are super cool. You've got different types of sedges.
Okay, I'm familiar with sedges.
Yeah. And some of those sedges and juncus can live in a terrestrial boggy area really well.
Yeah.
But they do great in a full on aquatic situation.
That's what we had. We had some of those at the U in a storm drain area. So it was on the hill, and it would come down, and it was a huge area, and we had to maintain all these plants around it. But there was no water. But it was for when it did rain, it would fill up with water. And
it would be able to help keep the erosion factor under control.
Exactly, and the flooding, mitigate flooding and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But we had sedge in there.
Yeah.
So that's my experience with sedge.
It's a good one. And they have ornamental varietal. But moving on, water lilies. Everybody knows water lilies, right? They give you that big, huge, beautiful flower. The pads are super attractive and can be. And water lilies, that genus is so massive. It's kind of like saying, it's not just one or two water lilies types. There's 50 to 100 different types. It's kind of like cacti for the desert. It's not just one type of cacti. There's hundreds.
So it's kind of like probably still in different regions, right? So you couldn't plant some in warmer or colder. They're more specific in temperature.
Yeah, there are some that are hardy, and within the hardy groups of water lilies, that depending on what zone you're in. So, for example, we're zone 5-ish, and I have some yellow, white, and pink ones that are perennial.
Cool.
In the past, one really cool thing is this is kind of like a rare deal, but purchasing a tropical water lily that's blue gives you that blue hue with a yellow center, super fragrant. They're expensive, so it's one of those things that if you have a little greenhouse or something, you can kind of tuck it away and save it for the next year. That's great. But anyway, moving forward with the plant selection, iris. Always gives you an awesome bloom. Yellows and blues, easy to maintain. There are arrowheads, like Sagittatus aquafolius. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's obvious. It's the arrowheads type leaf. There's bulrush. Again, that can potentially be a weedy one, but when it's in a container, it rarely breaks out of its container. And then there's some floating plants, some aquatic plants that are just simply floating, and they orient themselves on top of the surface of the water. Their roots just kind of dangle down, and they're just constantly absorbing all of the nutrients out of the pond and helping aerate the pond. And those are called water hyacinth. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one called frogbit, and I'm not sure what the botanical name of that is, but it's just like a micro mini lily pad. So it has these little roots coming out of the bottom of these little mini lily pads, and they just kind of float on top of the water. And anyway, so that's a little bit of a list of plants that people can potentially use that are ornamental. And I just wanted to quickly mention a major weed problem, aquatic-wise, is Phragmites. And this is one that at Marinda kind of got out of hand. We had in the waterway in the pond there. And, man, we spent a lot of time pulling that one out.
Yeah.
It looks like a sedge. It looks like kind of more like a sedge than a juncus. But it's also one that I believe has been a real problem with Utah Lake.
Yep.
And in the waterways between here and there. And
I think it's just a big problem in the state, period. Any waterways, I see it. And it's a stinker because it's so hardy, so strong, rhizomal, or rhizominous, mm-hmm. And then it also biseeds, and it has these little feathery seed pods or whatever, and they just fly everywhere. And I know they've had a hard time with in some parts of where they do duck hunting, that has kind of filled in the areas, and it's harder for them to get into and see the ducks. So I know the land management and wildlife, the Bureau of Wildlife has an issue with it in the state. And I remember as a kid, it used to be cattails, and now all it is Phragmites. Like the Phragmites has pushed out all the cattails. From where I drive to, like, I'll go around the mountain to my parents' house, and it's just Phragmites along Great Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, it's a tough one. It's super invasive.
It's really hard to control.
Well, and it's a shame because I think about the cattail and how it's used as a source of food. The tuber.
Yeah.
You can just basically pull those up, rinse them off, and you can either cook it or just simply eat it raw. And it's a delicious source of starch. And
what does it taste like? Have you had it?
Like a potato.
Oh, it's like a potato.
Yeah, similar to a potato. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was edible. I've never tried it.
Yeah. So this pond that we have in the backyard, it's a 3,000 gallon pond, so it's a pretty good size. But in my mind, it's not only ornamental and looks beautiful, but I'm like, man, if I ever really needed fresh water, I have a good filtering system. Just go out there and filter that. Just drink that down.
So do you have to monitor the levels of chemicals or the pH factors and stuff in the pond? Do you put in any sort of chemicals, any fertilizers for the plants, or something to keep the insects down? Like, what do you do?
Those are great questions. Okay, so to keep the mosquitoes down, we use those little BT Bacillus thuringiensis donuts. And it's a biological control for it's like a larvicide. What's great about that is you can use that in conjunction with, we have goldfish. And every year we buy, 20 or 30 goldfish and toss them